Hi everybody, it's Andy Phillips here, and as you can see, I've got John, Rich, Guy, Embers, and Esther with us today. And well, we're going to be talking about something which irks us vastly, if that's a right way of putting it, but it irks us vastly. And this is something which came from a poll that we did. Well, Rich, do you want to quickly sort of give a bit of background on this about how it actually came about?
How this one came about? Well, as you may remember, a couple of weeks ago, we did a podcast on what we called Pratt arguments. These are arguments that have been previously refuted 1,000 times, and these are arguments that are always popping up on chats, on during debates, and what have you. So we posted the podcast on our Facebook page as usual, and sent out a boost as usual. And we started getting theists finding that video. And it's fair to say we got slightly spammed with a number of these Pratt arguments. And I thought, well, this is an opportunity for us to connect with you, our wonderful audience. And we put together a Twitter poll with the top 4 of those arguments that we got spammed with. And we held a vote, and by a margin of about 2-1, the topic that you, the viewers and listeners at home, wanted us to talk about was, I do not have enough faith to be an atheist. Or alternatively, atheism is just another religion. We sort of lump those two together, but as I think we can sort of outline, and I'll hand over to Guy in a second. We've got two sort of separate concepts within the one. So So today's episode is brought to you by you, our listeners, and we always like, obviously, to be responsive to our audience. So I'm going to hand over now to Guy to sort of go over a couple of the points that this argument makes.
Yes, well, thank you. I haven't read the book that you mentioned a few minutes ago. I don't know whether that's a book I should have read, and perhaps you'll fill me in a bit on what it says.
It's a book called I Do Not Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Frank Turek and Norman Geisler. Like most apologetic books, it's pretty poor, but it is considered one of the ones that a lot of people go to, and it's where this argument it basically comes from.
Right. Well, I mean, the interesting thing is about atheism as a religion, to start with that one, is that is supposed to be a criticism of atheism, sort of mounted against us by people who are religious. So they're almost admitting that being religious, having faith, is a problem and is not a desirable thing to have. Otherwise, why would they criticize us for it? They would congratulate us for having a religion. And so that's the first point that I always think of when it comes to atheism, is just a religion. And the second point, of course, is that atheism is about as much a religion as a fish is a bicycle. You know, to use this phrase, it is a completely different category of thing. In fact, atheism is the opposite, the exact opposite, pretty much, of a religion, because it is the denial of the central point of religion, which is, of course, belief in a God. So that's what I think about atheism as a religion. And the idea of not having enough faith to be an atheist is, again, a very similar, completely ridiculous point, because actually you don't need any faith to be a religion, to be an atheist. The whole point about atheism is that you're cutting away beliefs that cannot be justified or rationalized except with faith, because there's no evidence or no good evidence for them. And therefore, once you've done that and removed all of these mythological beliefs, what you have is atheism, which is again the opposite of having faith, I think. So those are always my sort of feelings about these particular jibes or criticisms.
Yeah. And they've all done that, haven't they? They've all done that with regards to religions other than their own.
That's true. Yeah. Mm.
Okay.
But I mean,
sorry. I think
go on, Esther. No, go on.
First of all, we need to find out what is faith. What's that thing called faith? So I looked up the definition of faith. Of course, there are many definitions, but this particular one is quite good because it says faith is a strong belief in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual conviction rather than proof. So there's no proof, no evidence, but we just believe because it is spiritual. How can we test what's in the spirit? How can we, how do we know that it is Yahweh and not Allah? How do you test these things? It's impossible to do so. So people, I say, this is me, my definition of faith is believing in anything, including lies. You can believe in lies and call it faith, I saw a picture today. I wish I could show it, but never mind. I will read what the picture says. The picture says, it's a picture of Jesus Christ. He's got children gathered around him, right? And he's speaking to the children. He said, it's quite simple. My Father, who is also me, impregnated a virgin, and I became human. Then I sacrificed myself to save you from myself. He's telling the children. So, I mean, what kind of faith do you need to believe that Jesus, he says, I am my Father. No, he's my Father. He's also me, impregnated this virgin, and I became human. And then I sacrificed myself to save. It's a mess. It is an absolute, the claims of religion. And that's why they need people to believe these things, because they don't make sense. They do not make sense. The claims of religion, not just Christianity, but all the religions. You only need to open the books and read, and you see things that to the average mind, it don't make sense. But of course, they need the people to believe. They need the people to, just go along. So yeah, hence why they say you need faith.
Well, I appreciate your definition of faith, because that was my first question. But the thing is, it's such a useless definition. I've got my own, and I think you need to take it back to belief, because it's belief is the first thing, and then faith is stronger than it, isn't it? So my definition of belief is an opinion about the unknown, because I contend that things that are true, incontrovertibly true, don't need believing. I mean, belief is an activity. You expend energy deciding and coming to believe. But there are certain things, like if I jump out of this window, I'm going to fall, where you don't need to expend that energy. So the act of believing is redundant for those things. So if you accept
you already have that potential energy when you leave.
Exactly.
Sorry.
So if you
physics joke.
If you accept that definition of belief, then faith is simply belief on steroids.
There are so many different types of definition. I mean, I like Matt Dillahunty's definition, which is faith is the excuse people give for believing things when they have no evidence. I think that's neat. But in Hebrews, is it Hebrews 11:1? And you get different translations, but the one I've just looked up is faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So that's the biblical definition of faith.
And I think that's probably one of the most accurate as well.
Yeah.
That seems to be the most accurate.
And actually one of the most damning, because that's exactly what it is saying.
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's because I remember reading that and thinking to myself, well, in their own book, they have this explanation, and that's why I'm an atheist. That specific section of that book is one of the reasons why I'm an atheist, because that doesn't make any sense. And you know, I think when we look at these sort of things, as Rich, as you said, we talked about the Pratt arguments, previously refuted 1,000 times. These arguments that we tend to have to go over again and again and again and again. And I'm talking about things like, you know, the design argument for miracles, argument from consciousness, ontological arguments, cosmological arguments, you know, but the list is huge. And, you know, these arguments come from religious apologetics. You know, it's a form of defending the faith, is to be an apologist for religion. And we've covered some of these. We haven't done them extensively, and I'd like to do more of these. But what we're talking about here, where it all sort of stems from, is that, you know, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. The book, and Guy, that I've read it, and it starts off with sort of trying to, you know, the preface of it is really to try and establish that being an atheist, you have to have some sort of faith to be an atheist, and it's right from that premise to start with. It just doesn't make any sense, and for me it's a willful misguidance of the terms. You know, to have a lack of belief in something. You know, we don't have to have faith to not believe in leprechauns. You know, the reason why I don't believe in leprechauns is simply because I've heard all the stories, but I've never seen any evidence of a leprechaun. I've heard people who have talked about leprechauns, and it's a part of mythology. You know, it's part of that Irish mythology. But I've never seen any evidence whatsoever, and I've never seen anything that's convincing. I mean, you know, every so often on the news you might see some joke story about someone who saw a leprechaun, but there's no evidence of that. And because of that, I just don't believe that leprechauns exist.
But of
I
course,
understand it's a mythology, but and the point is that it's exactly the same for God and gods. It's just that it's a much bigger thing for people, you know. But the belief in God is huge. And so if someone says that they don't believe in God, or there's not enough evidence to be convinced that there's a God, then apologists will get really, really pissy with you, because it's obvious, isn't it?
To put your unicorn analogy into context, the same way that religious people use the "I don't have enough faith to believe in to be an atheist."
Yeah, I did leprechauns, but unicorns work the same way.
No. Sorry, leprechauns are great because, well, of course, leprechauns have to exist, because if leprechauns didn't exist, how would we get rainbows for them to keep their pots of gold at the end of?
Got me. Exactly.
And of course, by you saying that these rainbows actually exist, and I think it's presumptuous of you not to believe in leprechauns when it's rather obvious that they exist because the rainbows exist.
Yeah,
and that
it's
is
a perfect example, Rich. Perfect example of religious apologetics.
Yeah, and they do it, and they use, instead of rainbows and leprechauns, they have God and the universe, or God and the origin of life. And what I find is, when people are using this, "I don't have enough faith to be an atheist," what they're actually saying is, I do not understand the complex, nuanced reasons why certain things are, and therefore it's easier for me to just say God did it. And how dare you, the atheist, say that God didn't do it, because it's obvious that God did it, otherwise it wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
I think it is easier and simpler to be an atheist. It is one of the easiest things. I think this is my opinion. Just not having this belief in a deity, because when you think about how many deities are there and how many religions and how many claims are out there, being an atheist is simply just rejecting all those claims, and that's about it. There's no additional there's no creed, there's no text, there's no you do not need anything to have a lack of belief in deities.
Exactly.
I think you need faith to believe in these religions, and you definitely need faith, because the claims
Well,
that are
that's-
made by these religions, just being an atheist is one of the simplest things, and you do not need faith to be an atheist.
I'm going to agree with you again, Esther, because what you've just said is something that was going through my mind too. The very expression, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, makes an assumption that atheism is a thing
Mhm.
with values and principles. You know, it's not an ideology. It's the lack of
Yeah,
a
exactly.
thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
John,
it's-
sorry, can I one quick chuck in here? John, do you think that, and this is what I basically think, but I just want to sort of get some clarification here. Do you think that they have to strawman us in order to argue against us? Because the straw man is that you have to have faith to be an atheist.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you couldn't have a book which is called "I Don't Have Enough Faith." So they have to put this straw man of there is an atheist must have faith.
Yes.
To not believe in God, you must have faith to not believe in God. They
Yes.
don't mention any evidence. I mean, it's completely disingenuous, and we know that. But they have to do those straw man arguments.
They do. Yes.
To argue against what we
Absolutely.
don't believe in.
There's a book.
I mean, one of the things.
Sorry, I was responding to Andy. There's a book written by Dr. Andy Bannister, namesake of yours, Andy. He's a PhD in Islamic studies, but he's a Christian. So he did his PhD in order to find out how better to attack them. But he's written a book, and it's called The Atheist Who Didn't Exist. And so he set up this idea of what he thinks an atheist is. And then he spent the whole book. It's a straw man on every page. And it's quite a thick book. I've got a copy of it here, or maybe I only got the Kindle version. But I was actually so incensed by it, I took it upon myself to write a book in response. And my book is subtitled with his title. But my book is called The Dreadful Consequences of Thinking Like a Theist. Because that was a reversal of his subtitle. He called his book The Atheist Who Didn't Exist, underneath Dreadful Consequences of Thinking Like an Atheist, or something. So I took the subtitle and made it my title. So this book is available on Amazon and any good bookstore.
No plugs. Yeah, but I think Andy, you're absolutely right, because one of the things that theists do, again, certainly these apologists, the straw man they make out of atheists is they try to insist what we positively believe. And of course, atheism is not actually a positive belief. It's if anything, you can either call it a lack of belief or a negative belief. we don't believe something exists because there's no good evidence for it. But they then go on and make assumptions to say, well, you have to believe that the universe happened this way, or you have to believe that moral values come from this, or whatever particular trope that you actually want to raise, or they want to raise. And it turns out, actually, in the vast majority of cases, it's not true. A lot of these things, the answer is, well, actually, we don't know how certain things happen. Or if we do know, it's from, as I said earlier, complex scientific investigations, which they either don't or don't want to understand. And in fact, a lot of them I don't understand. I mean, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a biologist. I'm a humble social scientist, which is, barely scientific. So yeah, they are setting up that straw man. The other thing I just wanted to point out, going back to Guy's earlier point on atheism being a religion, and them inferring through that religion actually is a bad thing after all. I don't think they're actually trying to say that. It might be what we might imply, but what they are trying to say is they're trying to accuse us of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we should, because nobody likes being called a hypocrite, especially when we're not actually being hypocrites. But nobody likes being called a hypocrite. And when religious people say that atheism is a religion, that is what they're accusing us of. They're accusing us of hypocrisy because we, once again, are believing in things that cannot be proven, which again completely misunderstands what atheism actually is. As I say, falsely accusing someone of hypocrisy is quite offensive. Now, obviously, I don't use offensiveness as an argument, because you can be offensive and still be right. But in this case, this is an attempt to make us try and feel unsure of ourselves when we are having our arguments, by accusing us effectively of hypocrisy. So I think that's something that we sort of need to have a look at and point out again when we are accused of this, or when people are making that argument. Because once again, where is the super? Religion infers the belief in either a god or the supernatural. Where is the god or the supernatural within atheism? And they tend to argue we're believing in unproven things, and we're not. When something is unproven, we either don't believe it, or we undertake scientific inquiries to find out whether or not it is true or not.
Or we admit we don't know.
Yeah. And we admit we don't know when we don't know.
It's perfectly honourable to admit you don't know.
I mean,
there's somebody I've been looking at on YouTube. He actively talks about atheism. He's a Christian, and he has a strong hatred for atheists, because he actively tries to prove that atheists are monsters, atheists are bad people, and atheists are all these things. And some of the claims that he has made so far, number one, he talks about evolution, and the fact that atheists believe in evolution, it's impossible for him to ever be an atheist, because he says atheists are evolutionists, right? Now you must understand, I'm an atheist, and I'm what you would call a new atheist, and I don't really know much about the subject of evolution. I don't. If you ask me about evolution, I can only tell you just about the basics, and that's about it. I cannot call myself an evolutionist. I don't know why people think being an atheist automatically, you're an evolutionist. That's one. Number two, he says that we have leaders, and the first person he talks about is Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin, saying that Joseph Stalin is the leader, well, one of the leaders of atheism. And if you want to know how atheists behave, you only need to go and check out Joseph Stalin. Now, I'm there thinking, who is Joseph Stalin? I've never heard of this person, and somehow he's supposed to be my leader. And then finally, this was the
He's
latest
also a little
one he
bit
come up
dead.
with, and he is dead. And the last one he came up with, he said that atheism has its roots in Jesuits Christian. He said that he came up with this propaganda thing and said that atheism is actually birthed by the Catholic Church, and that's why you never see atheists going after the Catholic. Honestly, I was just watching.
Has he not watched any of our videos?
Claims.
Yeah.
Or read any of our web pages?
And he's trying to say that atheism is a religion. He's so adamant. I don't.
Well, see, I think the problem is that they have to.
I don't know.
I mean, you only have to look up the definition of religion, and you can straight away say no. We're not a religion. We don't fall within its definition.
And the other thing he says is atheists are mesotheists, that we have a hatred for God. That's why he says we know God, we believe in God, but we just have a hatred in said God, and that's why we call ourselves atheists.
Oh, that's one that really hurts me.
That's scraping the barrel.
How can you hate something that doesn't exist? How do you?
Well, the important part of that actually is not the fact that we hate something that doesn't exist. He is insisting that, because there's actually a couple of biblical verses that say this, that we actually do believe that God exists. That our rejection of God is because of our hatred of something that we all know exists, because God has put it in the hearts of every human, the knowledge that he exists, which is absolutely ridiculous anyway. Yeah. But it sounds like this person. It sounds like this person that you listen to is an absolute ridiculous individual. I mean, it doesn't even seem like a mainstream. A mainstream is not even a mainstream.
Well said.
Yeah.
I have a confession to make, guys. This has never been released publicly before, but I have an effigy of God that I stick pins in every night before I go to sleep.
I wouldn't say that, John, because people would take you seriously. I mean, there are people who literally kiss the image of God or a saint every night,
which can't be hygienic. But there you go.
No. Well, when I was a young man, I learned Spanish in Valladolid, in Spain, and I stayed with this woman whose name was included the word garrote. She was descended from the person who invented the garrote. That was a claim to make. Every night before she went to bed, she kissed this image by her bedside, and it was disgusting. It was all greasy and dirty, and she'd been doing it for decades.
I notice Embers has been very quiet so far this podcast.
Yeah.
He just seems to be sitting there taking it in.
He's got a confession too.
No, because you know when I'm quiet, you know what's coming.
Oh yeah.
No, most of what we've been discussing so far is just different ways of saying the same thing. Esther kicked it off talking about faith. Now, if you look on the AUK website, you'll find a definition of faith, which it had there for a long time, as you'll know, Rich. Which faith, very simply, faith is belief and the absence of evidence, and that's what all of you said so far. But that's just the contracted version on the website. For me, you really do have to have faith to believe in religion, because there isn't any evidence whatsoever. And before any of the theists out there throw your hands up in the air and roll your eyes, don't mention the Bible, because that's not evidence. We've discussed this before. Now, here's an interesting thing, because somebody said that some theists have said you have to have faith to be an atheist. Now, here's a hypothetical question. As an atheist, and you're claiming that I need faith to be an atheist, what happens if I lose my faith in being an atheist? Do I wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly find myself in limbo because I've lost my faith in atheism, but I can't be religious because there's no evidence, therefore I can't believe in it? So we're going around in circles here.
It's
I mean,
obvious.
it's a hypothetical question, but it's been posed by some theists. So what's the answer to that?
It's obvious, Embers. You would be an atheist.
Ah,
But then it's an important way of thinking about that, because if you lose your faith in something you don't believe in, that doesn't make sense. So you can't come out of atheism by just not believing in a lack of belief. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well,
Because,
it's similar.
you know,
Sorry, Andy.
No, go on.
It's similar to people who change religions. Maybe they lose faith in Islam and then decide to become a Christian. I seriously, I do not get it. I really don't get it.
I think those people are looking for
when
faith, though, aren't they? They're looking for something out there. And they, when people come out of say Islam and go into Christianity, or the other way around, or to other religions, I think what they're actually doing is they do believe in God. They believe in something. They have a spiritual connection, apparently, according to them. But the church they're in just is not the church they want to be in. I mean, it happens the same with Christianity. I mean, I was reading something the other day about faiths or Christian faiths in the USA, and it seems to be an incredibly popular thing to, if you don't like the church you're in, you just move to a different church. And you keep on doing that until you find the church that agrees with you, and that's your church. And that seems to be the same sort of thing. You know, if you come out of Islam and move into Christianity, it's just that you don't like that version of faith, but you like this version of faith. It fits much better in, you know, the way you think. That's all it is.
Essentially, people just want to be in that sort of community and network.
They want a personal God.
Can I?
I had a chat last week.
Can I just say that? Can I just say that religious people? So if you're a Christian, you're an atheist. If you're a Muslim, all religious people are atheists. Reason why I say so is you're an atheist to all the other religions that you do not believe, except the one that you do believe. When I was making my way out of religion, I was going through these phases. I wasn't sure whether to call myself an atheist or not. So I started calling myself an agnostic, and just making those rounds, right? And when I saw this quote by somebody that said, we're all atheists of some sort. So whether you're a Christian, you're an atheist to Islam and, Judaism and all the other ones. And I thought, for me, it was like the eye opener. It was the thing I needed. And it's all that. I said, well, come to think, I've never thought about it that way. You know, if you're a Christian, you're an atheist to these other religions. So I thought, you know what? I'm an atheist. And, you know, that's when I started having the confidence to call myself an atheist.
It's a great point.
Yeah. So to ask my usual question, when somebody does slaps you with that line, you know, let's go with I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. What would be your standard response to that question?
Well, for me, I think faith by definition simply isn't a requirement to lack belief. You know, atheism is a null hypothesis. So it's and none of these God claims that have been put forth throughout time, all the stuff that we've heard, you know, the Pratt arguments, the previously refuted 1,000-time arguments, have absolutely zero merit. There is no proof of any of that. And we could list a whole bunch of these arguments, and we can tell you exactly how to debunk every single one of them. But to just utter the words, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, is to fundamentally misunderstand what atheism actually is. And it's disingenuous. It's,
but
it's
I think
things in our mouths.
I think, Andy, what we should really probably do is ask them what they think faith means.
Yes.
Because you know, as you say, it is a fundamental misunderstanding of what atheism is about. And I suspect if you ask them that, they will then begin to say things like the presuppositionalists say, which is that you know, you can't even begin to have logic or language or understanding without God already sort of underpinning it. So how do we deal with that point?
Well, why does it need a God to underpin it?
Well, that's one thing.
It works.
Because they never actually answer that question.
No, they just assume it.
They just assume it, and they say because it is.
It's a massive begging of the question.
Huge begging of the question.
Yeah.
But they don't care about that, because as far as they're concerned, they're right.
I think whoever makes that statement, that you need faith to be an atheist, I sense fear. I sense, just looking at that statement, comes across to me like this person is afraid to be an atheist because they're afraid. I think I will ask them, are you afraid to be an atheist? Because a lot of these religions have the fear factor in them. The people have been subjected to all these doctrines that put them in a place of fear, and you know, oh gosh, if I do not believe, I could be killed at the drop of a hat, and God can smite me in my sleep, and God, you know, why would you need faith to believe in a nothing? In just, you know, it's nothing there. What's there to be afraid of? So I feel that, you know, fear is a
good point.
A huge deal.
Yeah, a couple of things then. First of all, how can we have logic without an underpinning from God? Well, it works, doesn't it? I mean, there's rovers on Mars, a helicopter on Mars. So with or without an underpinning by God, that's irrelevant. The thing is effective. And the other thing is that you're right, Guy, in that it's always better to question these people rather than tell them. They don't like being told. So, yeah, I would say, what do you mean by faith? That's a good starting point. And finally, and I'm going to have to leave now, very soon because I've got another meeting. Finally, Pratt arguments that have been refuted 1,000 times, I'm afraid that's not enough. You know, there's how many? 7 billion people? We got to keep going. There's a lot yet that haven't heard the refutations.
Any last words from anybody?
Nope.
No, I think we've pretty much covered it, and I think I'll leave you with this. Actually, I think the vast majority of people that use that argument in, say, for example, on a Facebook page, comment, or on a Twitter post, are just regurgitating something that they've heard, which sounds clever. And actually, if you do start trying to ask them what they mean by what they've just said, I think they'll fall apart because they've not thought about it. And they're just, well, for want of a better expression, trolling. So for the most part, unless you're having a proper conversation with someone, I tend to ignore those comments. But it was what our readers, it was what our listeners wanted us to talk about. So we're really, really grateful. And we're going to be doing a few more of these soon. So thank you very much to those that tune in. And don't forget to subscribe.
Yep. Listen, guys, that'd be great. Let's finish it there. Yeah, subscribe to the channel if you're into this sort of stuff. And we're going to be back next week with another one of our podcasts. So we'll keep you informed of what's going on. See you next time. See you later.
Bye.
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 Well, thanks for joining us today, and don't forget to click that like button. Also, make a comment, and of course, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.